Hello, my name is Skylar, and today I'll be presenting Step 1 and Step 2 of the exercise. Step 1 talks about how language can be used when formatting your speech. Speeches are known to be formatted in an oral style, which is basically speaking with different tones, repetition, and interacting with your audience. The goal of giving a speech is to have your listeners take away something you have said within your speech. Many speech coaches encourage speakers to strive for simplicity. Now you may ask, what is simplicity? When you strive for simplicity, you are making your speech more understandable and easier to comprehend. For example, Donald Trump would be a great example for simplicity, especially during this time with him giving multiple speeches per day. With every question thrown at him, he responds clearly and simple, so his audience understands the message and takes away something he has said. Another important factor when giving a speech is using vivid imagery. When you use imagery, you are using one of the 5 senses, which is smell, taste, sight, hearing, or touch. Now, using imagery does not involve going into grave detail about the size and shape of a cup that you saw within your story. The best way to include imagery into your speech is how the Pocket Guide to Public Speaking puts it, using strong, active verbs and colorful adjectives. Rather than saying, "My neighbor looked through the window," you could say, "My neighbor spectated through the window." When you are formatting your speech, you essentially want to choose words that create a lasting impression. Rhetorical devices such as repetition, alliteration, and parallelism can help create a lasting impression on your audience. Repetition emphasizes the importance of key words and essentially implants ideas into the listener's minds. Rather than repeating words, alliteration repeats certain sounds. So for example, this could be, "She sells seashells by the seashore." Although it can sometimes be tricky to say, it makes you want to memorize it more. Parallelism is similar to the other rhetorical devices as it establishes how language is an important aspect to formatting your speech. Now, once we know how language is important, we move on to the 4 methods of delivery for a speech. Although preparing for a speech can be quite nerve-wracking, the pre-preparation nerves can be shown when you give your speech. Before you give your presentation, consider these 4 tips to have an effective delivery. The first tip is to strive for naturalness. Now, we all know it can be hard to make a speech natural when you are trying to memorize every point that you have within your speech. When this happens, remember to take a deep breath and imagine you are talking to a friend. The next tip is to speak with enthusiasm. It can be boring when the speaker does not seem happy to be there, so when you speak with enthusiasm in your voice. Doing this will make your audience stay engaged and interested in what you have to say. The next tip is to be confident. We all know this tip is easier said than done, but when you practice a lot and prepare the best you can, it will show within your speech and the audience will want to look up to you to be confident too. And lastly, be direct. Speak to your audience like it's a one-on-one and use eye contact to show you care about them and you want to help them. Now, we move on to the moment we have all been waiting for, the 4 different methods of delivery when you give a speech. The first method is speaking from a manuscript. When you speak from a manuscript, you are essentially writing down your whole speech and speaking word for word on what is on your speech paper. Now, this method is the least recommended when you give a speech because you give little eye contact and it restricts body movement. This method can be used if you have to address an emergency or quote something that cannot be misinterpreted. The next method is speaking from memory. Now, speaking from memory and speaking from manuscript can be very similar, but speaking from memory is essentially writing down your script and memorizing it word for word. Now, this method may be better than speaking from manuscript, but it also makes you more likely to forget key points and make you sound robotic. Speaking impromptu is the next method, which entails giving an unpracticed, improvised response that took little time to prepare. This is often used when a teacher calls on you to answer a question and you have to respond based on what you know and the facts that you know. And the last method of delivery is speaking extemporaneously. This method involves writing down the key points of your essay that you look back on if you feel stuck or do not know the next point. This method is often suggested when you give a speech because it encourages eye contact and body movement, but also helps the speaker jog their memory on what they have to say next. There's the breathing. So hopefully I helped you learn a thing or two about how to give a speech, and I wish you the best of luck on your next presentation.